pilots have voiced numerous concerns to me over the last several months about the ways that airlines may be cutting corners in their approach to try to meet post-pandemic demand without enough workers on their bench. And tonight, we're looking at how airlines have changed training, specifically at American Airlines, cutting training, pilots say, at the worst possible time.
Delta 1943, wind 35018, gust 24, runway 4 left, clear for takeoff.
It's a windy January night at JFK Airport in New York. Delta Airlines Flight 1943 has just been cleared for takeoff with 159 people on board, now barreling down the runway for takeoff to Santo Domingo. Just after the plane hits 90 miles an hour, an American Airlines crew taxis a Boeing 777 with 149 people on board onto the active runway, just hundreds of feet in front of the packed Delta flight.
Delta 1943, cancel takeoff clearance.
The Delta pilots slam on the brakes.
Rejecting.
Hold position.
The Delta flight stopping just 500 feet from where the American flight crossed in front of them.
Are the safety screens flashing red?
Flashing, they're steady red right now, steady.
The incident became the first of a string of major close calls this year to make headlines. Across airlines and airports, federal regulators have noticed an uptick in what they call serious incidents. And inside some of the world's biggest airlines, pilots are sounding alarms. But now, Scripps News has learned, in the months before the JFK incident, American Airlines made a string of changes to pilot training that, taken together, the airline's pilots union says could pose a real risk to safety, just as the airline industry feels stress like it's never felt before.
I've been flying for over 36 years, 30 years in the airlines with military experience prior. In all of my experiences, I have never seen so much pressure on a system and seen it start to leak as I've seen now.
System-wide staffing shortages from pilots to air traffic controllers to ground crew, coupled with a rapid rebound of post-pandemic demand and inflation, has put unprecedented strain on what has long been the safest way to travel. Now, as airlines struggle to keep planes moving without enough workers, pilots are concerned they're cutting safety corners and that regulators aren't paying close enough attention.
Approach altitude set.
Dennis Tager is an American Airlines captain and a spokesperson for the union that represents American pilots.
They went through and they culled through all of the requirements. What's the requirement by the FAA? And any time they found a high blade of grass that we were doing more than the FAA required, they said this is an opportunity to reduce that touch time with instructors and give that instructor time to go do something else.
Reduced frequency of brush-up or recurrent training. Increased workload for training pilots, crammed training sessions into off-peak travel periods, and more. In a January earnings call, CEO Robert Isom said the airline was stretching its training resources like never before. Business decisions to maximize human resources. All of the changes documented in a letter obtained by Scripps News, written last summer to acting FAA Administrator Billy Nolan. Nearly 2 months later, Nolan responded to the union. Flight Standards reviewed these and found them to be consistent with regulatory requirements and policy.
I'm not asking you if it's legal. That's a binary thing. That's a lazy way to oversee airlines. And he's a pilot. The most toxic thing you can say on the flight deck is, hey, Captain, it's legal.
Since that summer letter, more concerning changes came at American Airlines. At the end of last year, a bulletin telling pilots procedures would change to standardize what pilots say to each other during maneuvers like an aborted landing or go-around.
Going around. Toga. Flaps 15. We have a script for that. We have a script not because we're actors, but because that helps us communicate that certain things are being done as we're close to the ground and we're going around. So they tried to overlay procedures on every airplane that were pretty much the same as much as possible, which we were not against. But they popped this idea. They gave us a few weeks to look at some documents, 35 pages of a training bulletin that referenced another 65 pages in our manual.
A slew of changes with little time to review and no formal training, leading to pushback from the pilots and a follow-up telling them procedures could be mixed after the effective date of January 3rd until pilots got the hang of things.
That is the absolute opposite of what we do in aviation. I only get one manual. I can't carry two and go, well, I'm going to use part of the old one and then some of the new one.
In the January incident at JFK, cockpit voice recorders in both planes were overwritten from the time of the incident, and the American crew initially refused to be interviewed. The NTSB had to issue subpoenas to get them to comply. The incident happened just 10 days after American implemented those new procedures in the cockpit. The NTSB told Scripps News the investigation will include any communication or procedural issues inside or outside the cockpit that could have affected the safe operation of the flight.
We're a party status to that, means we're involved in it as a union, so we're going to just have to let the investigation come forth, and that'll have all the details that everyone is looking for.
While the FAA data on runway incursions shows no significant change in the sheer number of incidents, still tracking with about 1,500 to 1,800 incidents a year, it is the type of incident that is alarming.
There have been far too many close calls and near collisions recently, any of which could have had devastating consequences with precious lives lost.
At a safety summit in March, the head of the National Transportation Safety Board pointed the finger at the FAA for allowing NTSB safety recommendations to languish for years without implementation.
The NTSB has issued 7 recommendations on runway collisions that have not been acted upon. How many times are we going to have to issue the same recommendations?
Scripps News reached out to the FAA for comment. They said they're exploring new technology to help alert controllers to potential runway incursions. As for the concerns from American Airlines pilots, in a statement they repeated what they told the Allied pilots last summer and added, "We appreciate the Allied Pilots Association's continued commitment to aviation safety." American Airlines told Scripps News, "Safety is the foundation of every decision we make at American and is the North Star of our flight training program. Any changes or updates made to our flight training protocols are always in line with Federal Aviation Administration regulations and are only issued after a thorough risk-based safety assessment. We have the best, most expertly trained pilots in the business who are unwavering in their mission of operating a safe airline for our customers and fellow team members."
There's going to be cracks in the system under pressure, and they're starting to show up in these incidents. Thank God they haven't been accidents.
All right. At his simulator training facility in Illinois, Mike Gerga sees the impact in clients who walk through his doors.
We take everything seriously. Give us more training. Give us the tools to make it a better place. I think that has to be pushed, I think.
A resounding call from inside and outside cockpits to keep planes the safest way to travel.
We have a lot of new people. Imagine this, a lot of unseasoned professionals are being put into a full-on sprint from day one. That is a recipe for incidents which have already happened and possible disaster.
As for those NTSB safety recommendations to the FAA, Dell, one of them has been open and under consideration for 23 years.